Alright, so with this video, we are going to look at the French Wars of Religion. If you think back to chapter 12, we learned that Martin Luther accidentally started the Protestant Reformation when he criticized the Catholic Church selling indulgences in his 95 Theses. And so, if you were not Catholic but you were Christian, you're essentially a Protestant, right? And there are different kinds of Protestantism, right? There's the Lutherans, right? The first ones, but eventually there are Calvinists and Anabaptists, and on and on and on it goes, right? And Christianity during this time, whether it's Protestant or Catholic, it was militant, combative, willing to use violence to defend what it thought was right. In this context or in this time period, Protestants thought that God would give them victory when they fought the Catholics because God was on their side, and the Catholics thought the same thing. So Christianity was very militant, it's very violent, it's very aggressive during this time period. Now, not all Christians. There were still Christians at the time who pointed out that this was absurd and stupid for Christians to kill Christians, and of course they were right. But the majority opinion was it's okay for Protestants to kill Catholics in battle and for Catholics to kill Protestants in battle, and that's just how it went. It's very militant. And this is going to affect France. France mainly was Catholic, but Protestantism spread to France, and you ended up with a particular kind of Protestants in France called Huguenots. Huguenots were French Protestants influenced by the ideas of a guy named John Calvin. Now, the Huguenots never were large in number, only around probably under 10% of the population. But they were still important because half of the French nobility were Huguenots. So half of the people in France with money, therefore power, were Huguenots. French Protestants influenced by John Calvin. Therefore, they mattered. And eventually these Huguenots will come to be led by the man you see on the screen there, a guy named Henry of Navarre, a main character in the story that we're about to learn. And opposing them are the Holy League, or sometimes called the Ultra Catholics of France. So what you're going to have in France in about 4 decades are 8 different civil wars all over religion, all Christians killing Christians, Catholics and Protestants fighting each other back and forth. It's going to go on for roughly 4 decades and tear the country apart. Christianity was militant back then. It was combative. Now, there was non-religious reasons for the war as well. Many of the nobility resist the growing power of the French king, who was Catholic. For centuries, the French nobility had a whole lot of power on a day-to-day basis, and the king had started to take that power for himself. And so there were non-religious reasons for a nobleman to become a Huguenot because it was a way to resist the growing power of the Catholic king. You see, we are used to a separation of church and state, right? That's what we have now. Right? They're separate. Religion and government are kept separate for very good reasons. That's a very new concept. It's only been around for a couple of centuries, right? Back then, religion and government, it was all mixed together. So you might have one French nobleman who was a Huguenot because he truly believed in his heart that it was the correct religious path. And you might have another French nobleman who becomes Huguenot just to mess with the king. Or you might have a third Huguenot who are just doing it for both reasons, right? Because religion and government back then was all mixed together. So the ultra Catholics and the Huguenots, right, are going to fight each other 8 different times in 4 decades. Now, at one time, there was an attempt to make a peace between the two. The Catholic king actually made peace with the Huguenots, and to seal the peace, arranged for Henry of Navarre, leader of the Huguenots, to marry his sister. Remember, you did not get married for love back then. So you're going to have the leader of the Protestants, the Huguenots, Henry of Navarre, marry the Catholic king's sister to seal the peace. As you can see on the screen, that did not end well. Many of the leading Huguenots came to Paris for the wedding, and the wedding happened without a hitch, and everything was awesome until the morning of St. Bartholomew's Day, where the Catholics began to murder the Huguenots throughout Paris and eventually throughout France. It was even said that some of the rivers ran red with blood. It was a great slaughter. The only reason why Henry of Navarre was not killed is because he was married to the king's sister, so he was given a choice. Hey, convert to Catholicism or we're going to kill you. Henry of Navarre, being super practical, said, okay, hey, now I'm Catholic. Escaped from Paris, basically ran away and became a Protestant again and rejoined his fellow Huguenots, and the war started all over again. And then the Catholic king died, and he didn't have any heirs. So the throne went to his Catholic brother, and then his Catholic brother died without any heirs. And in France, the throne cannot go to a woman. It just can't. So it couldn't go to any of the king's sisters. So they had to find the closest living male relative of the king to give him the throne. And it turns out that the closest living male relative to the Catholic king that just passed away happened to be Henry of Navarre, leader of the Protestant Huguenots. So Henry of Navarre now becomes the king. King Henry IV, starting the Bourbon dynasty. There's a bit of a problem, though. For him to officially become king, he's got to go to Paris. That's where the crown is. He has to go through the ceremony. You've probably seen it in the movies before, where he kneels for a priest, and the priest blesses him, and then puts the crown on his head. He's got to go through all the ceremony before he's officially the king. Okay? So Henry of Navarre and his fellow Huguenots, they ride towards Paris to claim the throne, and the gates to the city are locked, and the people of Paris not let Henry of Navarre in because the people of Paris are Catholic and they just cannot stand the idea of having a Protestant as a king. Okay? So Paris has refused him entry and will not let him in. So he's got a decision to make. He can basically attack his own capital and prolong the religious wars, or he can simply become Catholic, which is exactly what he does. Legend says that Henry of Navarre said Paris is worth a mass. A mass is a Catholic church service. Basically, he said, look, it's worth it. I'll just become Catholic so I can become king. Which sometimes some people criticize him for, like, oh, you know, he betrayed his Huguenots, he betrayed his principles. And I'm gonna have to disagree with that. So he becomes Catholic, and the people of Paris let him in. And he's crowned. He becomes king, and he stays Catholic, right? But he uses his newfound power to end the wars of religion and to protect the Huguenots, right? So he's going to use his power as king to try to make everybody happy. And he's going to protect the Huguenots with this special edict, this special decree called the Edict of Nantes. Right? And what the Edict of Nantes did is it recognized Catholicism as the official religion of France. So he's publicly declaring France is a Catholic nation, which that made most of the Catholics happy. Not all of them, but most of them happy. At the same time, he gave the Huguenots full political and civil rights, which means the Huguenots can worship however they want. They can go to their Huguenot church and read their Huguenot Bible and sing their Huguenot songs, and it's fine. And no one can mess with them because of that. Now, they can't stand on the street corner trying to convert people. That's not allowed because that could cause some tension. But they can be Huguenots and it's fine. They also have full political rights. Certain government positions were denied to Huguenots previously. Certain military positions were denied to them. Henry of Navarre is saying, look, I don't care if you're Catholic or you're Huguenot, a Protestant. As long as you pay your taxes, you follow the laws, and you leave your neighbor alone, it's fine. He also gave the Huguenots control of 100 fortified towns, just in case the Catholics, which were the overwhelming majority of the population, ever decided to try to attack the Huguenots again, they would have these 100 fortified towns to protect them. So Henry IV, formerly known as Henry of Navarre, the guy that started the Bourbon dynasty in France, Henry IV of France goes down as one of the better, if not one of the best kings France had, because he ended the French wars of religion. He made most of the Catholics happy. He made most of the Huguenots happy. He brought a time of peace to his country. Unfortunately, it does not end well for Henry of Navarre, Henry IV. Later on in life, he will be assassinated by an extremely militant, radical Catholic assassin. But even after that, at least for a little while, the peace between the Catholics and the Huguenots will hold. Sometimes Henry IV is called Henry they're great because of the peace that he brought to France.